Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Heirs of the Force, Chapter 2. Jaina ducked back into her quarters to change into fresh clothes as Jason ran to stash the crystal snake in its cage. She splashed cold water on her face from the new cistern in her bedroom wall. Her face still damp and tingling, she stepped out into the corridor. "Hurry, or we'll be late," she said as Jason ran to join her. Together the twins dashed to the turbolift, which took them to the upper levels of the pyramid-shaped temple. They entered the echoing space of the grand audience chamber. The air was bustling hum of other Jedi candidates assembling in the large room where Luke Skywalker spoke every day. Shafts of morning light glinted off the polished stone surfaces. The light carried an orange cast, reflected from the orange gas giant hanging in the sky, the planet Yavin, around which the small jungle moon orbited. Dozens of other Jedi trainees of varying ages and species found their places in the rows of stone seats spread out across the long, sloped floor. To Jaina, it looked as if someone had splashed a giant stone down on the stage, sending parallel waves of benches rippling toward the back of the chamber. A mixture of languages and sounds came to Jaina's ears, along with the rich, open-air smell that came from the uncharted jungles outside. She sniffed, but could not identify the different perfumes from flowers in bloom, though Jason probably knew them all by heart. Right now, she smelled the musty bodily odors of alien Jedi candidates, matted fur, sun-baked scales, sweet, sour pheromones. Jason followed her to a set of empty seats, past two snout, pink-furred beasts that spoke to each other in growls. As she sat on the slick, cool seat, Jaina looked up at the squared-off temple ceilings, at which many different shapes and colors mounted in mosaics and alien patterns. "Every time we come here," she said, "I think of those old video clips of the ceremony where Mom handed out medals to Uncle Luke and Dad. She looked so pretty." She put her hand up to her straight, unstyled hair. "Yeah, Dad looked like such a pirate," Jason said. "Well, he was a smuggler in those days," Jaina answered. She thought of the rebel soldiers who had survived the attack on the first Death Star, of those who had fought against the Empire in the great space battle to destroy this terrible superweapon. Now, more than 20 years later, Luke Skywalker had turned the abandoned base into a training center for Jedi hopefuls, rebuilding the Order of Jedi Knights. Luke himself had been training other Jedi back when the twins were barely 2 years old. Now he had often left on his own missions and spent only part of his time at the academy. But it remained open under the direction of other Jedi Knights Luke had trained. Some of the trainees had virtually no Force potential, content to be mere historians of Jedi lore. Others had great talent, but had not yet begun their full training. It was Luke's philosophy, though, that all potential Jedi could learn from each other. The strong could learn from the weak, the old could learn from the young, and vice versa. Jason and Jaina had come to Yavin 4, sent by their mother, Leia, to be trained for part of the year. Their younger brother, Anakin, had remained home back in the capital world of Coruscant, but he would be coming to join them soon. Off and on during their childhood, Luke Skywalker had helped the children of Han Solo and Princess Leia to learn their powerful talent. Here in Yavin 4, they had nothing to do but study and practice and train and learn, and so far had been much more interesting than the curriculum the stuffy educational droids had developed from back on Coruscant. "Where's Tenel Ka?" Jaina scanned the crowd but saw no sign of their friend from the planet Dathomir. "She should be here," Jason said. "This morning I saw her go do her exercises in the jungle." Tenel Ka was a devoted Jedi who worked hard to attain her dreams. She had little interest in the bookish studies, the histories, and the meditations, but she was an excellent athlete who preferred action to thinking. That was a preferable skill for a Jedi, Luke Skywalker had told her, providing Tenel Ka knew when it was appropriate. Their friend was impatient, hard-driven, and practically humorless. The twins had taken a challenge to see if they could make her laugh. "She'd better hurry," Jason said as the room began to quiet. "Uncle Luke's going to start soon." Catching a movement out of the corner of her eye, Jaina looked up at one of the skylights high in the wall of the tall chamber. The lean, supple silhouette of a young girl edged into the narrow stone windowsill. "Ah, there she is." "She must have climbed the temple from the back," Jason said. "She was always talking about doing that, but I never thought she'd try." "Plenty of vines there," Jaina answered logically. So if scaling the enormous ancient monument was something Jedi students did every day. As they watched, Tenel Ka used a thin leather thong to tie her long, rusty gold hair behind her shoulder to keep it out of her way. Then the muscular girl flexed her arms. She attached a silvery grappling hook to the edge of the stone sill and reeled out a thin fiber cord from her utility belt. Tenelka lowered herself like a spider on a web, walking precariously down the long, smooth surface of the inner wall. The other Jedi trainees watched her, some applauding, others just recognizing the girl's skill. She could have used her Jedi powers to speed the descent, but Tenelka relied on her body whenever possible and used the Force only as a last resort. She thought it showed weakness to depend too heavily on her special powers. Tenelka made an easy landing on the stone floor, her glistening, scaly boots clicking as she touched down. She flexed her arms again to loosen her muscles, then grasped the thin fiber cord. With a snap from the Force, she propped her grappling hook up and away as from the stone above and neatly caught it in her hand as it fell. She reeled the fiber cord into her belt and turned around with a serious expression on her face, then snapped the thong free from her hair and shook her head to let the reddish tresses fall loose around her shoulders. Tenelka dressed like the other woman from Dathomir, in a brief athletic outfit made from scarlet and emerald skins of native reptiles. The flexible, lightly armored tunic and shorts left her arms and legs bare. Despite her exposed skin, Tenelka never seemed bothered by scratches or insect bites, though she made numerous forays into the jungle. Jason waved at her, grinning. She acknowledged him with a nod, then made her way over to where the twins were sitting, and slid into the cool stone bench beside Jason. "Greetings," Tenelka said gruffly. "Good morning," Jaina said. She smiled at the Amazonian young woman, who looked back at her with large, cool gray eyes, but did not return her smile. Not out of rudeness, but because it wasn't her nature. Tenelka rarely smiled. Jason nudged her with the elbow and dropped his voice. "I've got a new one for you, Tenelka. You think you'll like it. I think you'll like it. What do you call a person who brings a Rancor its dinner?" Tenelka, she looked perplexed. "I don't understand." "It's a joke," Jason said. "Come on, guess." "Ah, a joke," Tenelka said, nodding. "You expect me to laugh?" "You won't be able to stop yourself once you hear it," Jason said. "Come on, what do you tell the person who brings a Rancor its dinner?" "I don't know," Tenelka said. Jason would have bet 100 credits the girl wouldn't even venture a guess. "The appetizer!" Jason chuckled. Jaina groaned. "Oh." But Tenelka's face remained serious. "I'll need you to explain to me why that's funny. But I see the lecture is about to start. Tell me some other time." Jason rolled his eyes. Just as Luke Skywalker stepped onto the speaking platform, a flustered Raynar emerged from the turbolift. Puffing and red-faced, he bustled down the long promenade between seats, trying to find a place where he could sit up front. Jaina noticed the boy now wore an entirely different outfit that was as bright as the one before, and of colors that clashed just as much. He sat down and gazed up at the Jedi Master, obviously wanting to impress the teacher. Luke Skywalker stood on the raised platform and looked out at his mismatched students. His bright eyes seemed to pierce the crowd. Everyone fell silent as if a warm blanket had fluttered down over them. Luke still had the boyish looks that Jaina recalled from the history tapes, but now he carried calm power in his lean form, a thunderstorm bottled up in a diamond-hard gentleness. Through many trials, Luke had somehow emerged bright and strong. He had survived to form the cornerstone of the new Jedi Knights that would protect the New Republic from the last vestiges of evil in the galaxy. "May the Force be with you," Luke said in a soft voice that nevertheless carried the length of the grand audience chamber. The words of the oft-repeated phrase often sent a tingle across Jaina's skin. Beside her, Jason flashed a smile. Tenelka sat up rigidly, as if in homage. "As I have told you many times," Luke said, "I don't believe the training of a true Jedi comes from listening to lectures. I want to teach you how to learn action, how to do things, not just to think about them. There is no try, as Yoda, one of my own Jedi Masters, taught me." In the front row, a flash of bright color, Raynar raised his hand, wrangling his fingers in the air to get Luke's attention. An audible groan rippled through the chamber. Jason heaved a heavy sigh, and Jaina waited, wondering what question Raynar would come up with this time. "Master Skywalker," Raynar said, "I don't understand what you mean by there is no try. You must have tried and failed sometime. No one always succeeds in what they want to do." Luke looked at the boy with an expression of patience and understanding. Jaina never understood how her uncle could maintain his composure, though Raynar's frequent interruptions, but she supposed it must be the mark of a true Jedi Master. "I didn't say that I never fail," Luke said. "No Jedi ever becomes perfect. Sometimes, though, we succeed in doing what is not exactly what we intended to do. Focus on what you accomplished rather than what you merely hoped to do, or what you failed to do. Yes, recognize what you have lost, but look in a different way to see what you have gained." Luke folded his hands together and walked with gliding footsteps from one side and speaking platform to the other. His bright eyes never left Raynor's upraised face, but somehow Luke seemed to look at all the students, speaking to every one of them. "Let me give you an example," he said. "A few years ago, I had a brilliant trainee named Brackus. He was a talented student, a ferocious learner. He had a great potential for the Force. He seemed kind and helpful, fascinated by everything I had to teach. He was also a great actor." Luke took a deep breath, facing an unpleasant memory from his past. "You see, once it became known that I had founded an academy of Jedi to teach Jedi Knights, it is not surprising that the remnants of the Empire would have their own students infiltrate my academy. I managed to catch their first few attempts. They were clumsy and untalented. But Brackus was different. I knew he was an Imperial spy from the moment he stepped off the shuttle and looked around the jungles at the jungles of Yavin 4. I could sense it in him, a deep shadow barely hidden by his mask of friendliness and enthusiasm. But in Brackus, I also saw a real talent for the Force. Part of him had been corrupted long ago. He had a deep flaw, surrounded by a beautiful exterior. But rather than reject him outright, I decided to keep him here, to show him other ways, to heal him. Because if there was to be good even in the heart of my father, Darth Vader, there must be goodness in someone as fresh and new as Brackus." Luke gazed up at the ceiling, then returned his gaze to the audience. "He stayed here for many months, and I took special interest in teaching him, guiding him, nudging him toward the light side of the Force in every way. He seemed to be softening. But Brackus was colder and more deceptive than even I had suspected. During one part of his training, I sent him on an illusionary quest that would seem real to him, a test that made him see himself, face himself. Brackus had to look inward, to see his very core in a way that no one else could ever see. I hoped the test would heal him, but instead Brackus lost that battle. Perhaps he was simply not prepared to confront what he saw inside himself. It broke him somehow. He fled from this jungle moon. I believe he went straight back to the Empire, taking with him everything I had taught him of the Jedi way." Many students in the grand audience chamber gasped. Jaina sat up and looked at her brother in alarm. She had never heard this story before. Raynor again had his hand up, but Luke looked at him with narrowed eyes so full of power that the arrogant student flinched and put his hand back down. "I know what you're thinking," Luke continued, "that I tried to bring back Brackus to the light side, and that I failed. But as I told you moments ago, I was forced to look at how I succeeded. I did show Brackus my compassion. I did let him learn the secrets of the light side, uncorrupted by what he had already been taught. I did make him look at himself and realize how broken he was. Once I accomplished that much, the task was no longer mine. The final choice belonged to Brackus himself, and it still does." Now he raised his eyes and looked across the gathered Jedi. At Luke's gaze passed over them, Jaina felt an electric thrill, as if an invisible hand had just brushed her. "To become a Jedi," Luke said, "you must face many choices. Some may be simple, but troublesome. Others may be terrible ordeals. Here at my Jedi Academy, I can give you tools to use when facing those choices, but I cannot make the choices for you. You must succeed in your own way." Before Luke could continue, sudden screeching alarms rang out, sounding an emergency. R2-D2, the little droid Luke kept near his side, rushed into the grand audience chamber, emitting a loud series of unintelligible electronic whistles and beeps. Luke seemed to understand them, though he leapt down from the stage. "Trouble at the landing pad," Luke said, sprinting for the turbolift. He continued to speak to his students as he ran, his robes flapping behind him. "Think about what I've told you, and go practice your skills." The students milled about in conversation, not knowing what to do. Jason, Jaina, Tenelka looked at each other, same thought in each of their minds. "Let's go see what's going on."